Alejandro Torres, an ambitious millionaire, built an empire but lost his way. A surprise reunion with his ex-wife and daughter at a shelter made him rethink what truly matters in life: family and love. Before we dive into the story, let's do what Sleepless in Seattle taught us. Share where you're listening from. Comment below. The Los Angeles skyline stretches before Alejandro Torres like a carpet of stars, each light a reminder of the empire he's built. He stands at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, fingers wrapped around a crystal tumbler of scotch he hasn't tasted. The quarterly reports scattered across his desk paint a picture of relentless success: acquisitions, mergers, profit margins that would make his younger self dizzy with disbelief. Yet something hollow echoes in the sterile perfection of the space. A soft knock breaks his reverie. Maria Hernandez, his assistant, steps into the office with the precise efficiency that makes her invaluable. Mr. Torres, congratulations are in order. The Rivera Tech acquisition just closed. Alejandro's reflection stares back at him from the window, all sharp angles and expensive tailoring. Success looks good on him. His mother would say as much if she were still alive to see it. But her voice whispers other things in his memory. Nunca olvides de donde vienes. Never forget where you come from. Thank you, Maria. His voice carries the polish of Ivy League education, any trace of his East LA accent long buried. You can head home. It's New Year's Eve. I'm sure you have plans. You as well, sir. The guests will start arriving at the mansion in a few hours. Alejandro nods, dismissing her. As the door clicks shut, he moves to his desk and pulls open the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of manila folders lies a silver frame, face down. He doesn't need to look at it anymore. The image is burned into his memory. Camila on their wedding day, her dark eyes bright with promise, both of them young enough to believe love could survive anything. His phone buzzes. The CFO, probably with more congratulations about Rivera Tech. Alejandro lets it ring, lost in the ghost of Camila's voice from their last real conversation. You've built this tower of success, Alejandro, but you've walled yourself inside it. When was the last time you visited your mother's grave? When was the last time you danced or laughed or just existed without checking your stock prices? He'd dismissed her concerns then, certain she'd understand eventually. Success meant security. Wasn't that what his mother had worked 3 jobs to provide? But Camila wanted more than security. She wanted the man who used to sneak away from business school to paint with her in the park, who taught art to kids at the community center, who dreamed of changing the world instead of just owning pieces of it. The ring of his office phone cuts through the memory. Alejandro straightens, adjusting his tie in the window's reflection. The hollow-eyed man staring back at him looks nothing like that idealistic boy. He's better now, stronger. The ache in his chest when he thinks of Camila is just indigestion from too much coffee. The party will start soon. Another carefully orchestrated display of power and influence, where everyone wants something from him, but no one really sees him. His mother's voice echoes again. El dinero no compra la felicidad, mi amor. Money doesn't buy happiness. Shut up, mama, he mutters, but there's no heat in it. Just tired resignation as he gathers his coat and laptop, preparing to play his role in the spectacle of success he's created. The elevator ride to the garage is silent except for the soft hum of machinery. Mateo, his driver, waits with the car door open. Evening, Mr. Torres, to the Beverly Hills mansion? Yes. Alejandro slides into the back seat, reaching for his phone before catching himself. Instead, he watches the city scroll past, streets growing wider and cleaner as they leave downtown behind. The mansions here are different from the cramped apartments of his childhood, where his mother grew herbs in coffee cans on the windowsill, and the whole building smelled like competing dinners. His own mansion rises from manicured grounds like a modern fortress. Already, cars line the circular drive, sleek European models worth more than his mother made in a decade. Alejandro straightens his shoulders, donning the mask of the successful CEO like armor. The party swirls around him in waves of designer perfume and practiced laughter. Celebrities mingle with tech moguls, influencers document every carefully curated moment, and somewhere a DJ spins remixes of songs that all sound the same. Alejandro moves through it all with practiced ease, shaking hands, making deals disguised as small talk, playing the game he's mastered. Alejandro Torres himself, a familiar voice cuts through the noise. Look how far you've come from those summer afternoons playing soccer in the street. Javier Morales approaches, his off-the-rack suit and genuine smile marking him as out of place in this crowd. He's aged since Alejandro saw him last, gray threading through his hair, lines deepening around his eyes, but his handshake is still firm, grounding. Javier. Alejandro gestures to a passing waiter for fresh drinks. I didn't expect to see you here. Your assistant invited me. She said something about maintaining community connections. Javier accepts the champagne but doesn't drink. Your mother would be proud, you know, all this success. The words land like a punch to the gut. She wanted security for me, nothing more. She wanted happiness for you. There's a difference. Javier's eyes are kind but knowing. Camila understood that. Alejandro's grip tightens on his glass. Don't. She's doing good work now, helping people, following her heart like she always did. Javier pauses, weighing his next words. Like you used to, before the money became everything. The first explosion of fireworks paints the sky outside, reflecting off the pool's surface in fractals of light. Alejandro watches, remembering other New Year's celebrations, cramped apartments filled with family, the smell of his mother's tamales, Camila's laugh as they dance to old boleros. The hollow feeling in his chest expands. If you'll excuse me. He doesn't wait for Javier's response, retreating to his study. The music fades behind thick doors, leaving him alone with memories he spent years trying to forget. The party continues without him. Around midnight, he slips out to the waiting car, loosening his tie like it's been choking him all night. Home, Mr. Torres? Mateo asks, holding the door. Yes. Take the long way. They wind through residential streets, past houses decorated for Christmas. Mateo fills the silence with casual conversation, mentioning local news, community events. They're doing good work at that new shelter on Figueroa, helping immigrant families get back on their feet. Alejandro makes a non-committal sound, watching shadows play across familiar buildings. They're nearing his old neighborhood now, though he didn't request this route. The shelter Mateo mentioned comes into view, its worn brick facade warm with light despite the late hour. A woman stands near the entrance, bouncing a baby in her arms. The streetlight catches her profile, and Alejandro's heart stops. He knows that gesture, the way she tilts her head when she laughs. 5 years haven't changed her enough to hide her from him. Stop the car. His voice comes out strangled. Sir, stop here, Mateo. The car glides to a halt. Alejandro stares through the tinted window, frozen between past and present. Camila looks thinner than he remembers, her hair shorter, but she moves with the same grace that first caught his eye in college. The baby in her arms can't be more than a few months old. His hand finds the door handle before his brain catches up. The night air hits him like a physical thing, carrying the scent of someone's late dinner, the distant echo of fireworks. Camila turns at the sound of his footsteps, and the world narrows to the space between them. Recognition flickers across her face, followed by something else, wariness, perhaps, or resignation. Alejandro. His name in her voice unravels years of careful distance. He takes another step forward, aware of how out of place his $1,000 suit looks in this setting. Camila, I didn't expect. No, you wouldn't. She shifts the baby to her other hip, protective. Happy New Year. The child blinks at him with dark eyes that stir something uncomfortable in his chest. Is she? This is Mia. Camila's tone gives nothing away. We volunteer here sometimes, don't we? Mia Moore? The last words are directed at the baby, who burbles in response. Alejandro's world tilts on its axis. The timing, the resemblance, his mind races with calculations he doesn't want to face. Camila, it's late. She takes a step back toward the shelter's entrance. The residents will be wondering where we are. You should go home, Alejandro, back to your world of champagne and skyscrapers. Wait. He reaches for her without thinking, then drops his hand at her sharp look. Please, can we talk? About what? The past is past. But something flickers in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe? Or memory. Go home. Be safe. She disappears inside before he can respond, leaving him alone with questions that burn like acid in his throat. The drive home passes in a blur of city lights and tangled thoughts. In his penthouse, morning finds him still in his party clothes, staring at the skyline as if it might offer answers. The sun rises over Los Angeles, painting his empire in shades of gold. But for the first time in years, Alejandro Torres doesn't see success in the gleaming towers and endless opportunities. He sees what he left behind in his climb to the top: family, love, the simple joy of holding someone who sees past his carefully constructed facade. His phone chimes with meeting reminders and congratulatory messages about Rivera Tech. Alejandro ignores them all, lost in the memory of dark eyes and the weight of choices he can't undo. In the drawer, Camila's wedding picture lies face down like an accusation. Something has to change. The thought comes with the clarity of dawn, inevitable as sunrise. He doesn't know how yet, but he knows with bone-deep certainty that his life can't continue as it has. The universe has given him a second chance, Mia's existence proof that the past isn't as buried as he pretended. Los Angeles wakes around him, another day of deals and acquisitions beginning. But Alejandro Torres stands at his window, watching a different future unfold, one where success is measured in moments of connection rather than digits in a bank account. His mother's voice whispers again, "Nunca olvides de donde vienes." For the first time in years, he's ready to listen. The shelter's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Camila's face, deepening the exhaustion in her eyes. Mia squirms in her arms, reaching tiny fingers toward the silk of Alejandro's tie. He steps back, hands clenched at his sides to keep from reaching out. "She's beautiful," he manages, studying the curve of Mia's cheek, the familiar slope of her nose. His throat tightens at the possibilities spinning through his mind. Camila shifts Mia higher on her hip, a practiced motion that speaks of countless nights and early mornings. Her sweater is well-worn but clean, her jeans bearing faint paint stains. This version of her, practical, purposeful, feels more real than any memory he's carried. "The shelter needs volunteers," she says, her voice careful, neutral. "Real ones, not corporate photo opportunities. These families have been through enough without becoming PR stunts." The accusation stings, but Alejandro recognizes the truth in it. How many charity events has he attended solely to network, to maintain the image expected of a CEO? "I can help," he offers. "Resources, funding. Money isn't everything." Camila's laugh holds no humor. "Wasn't that what I kept trying to tell you?" Mia fusses, a thin cry that echoes off institutional walls. Camila soothes her with soft Spanish words, the same endearments Alejandro's mother once used. The similarity makes his chest ache. "She's 6 months old," Camila says quietly, not meeting his eyes. "She was born in June, the hottest day of summer." The words land like stones in still water, ripples of understanding spreading outward. June. 9 months after their last encounter, a desperate night when Camila came to his office to return her keys. They'd argued, then stopped arguing, grief and memory overwhelming good sense. He'd woken alone, her scent on his skin, certain it was really goodbye. "Camila." "It's late," she cuts him off. "The residents will be serving dinner soon. I need to help." She turns toward the corridor, then pauses. "You know where to find us now if you want to do more than write checks. But don't come back unless you mean it, Alejandro. Some things shouldn't be broken twice." He watches her disappear down the hallway, Mia's dark eyes peering over her shoulder until they turn a corner. The shelter's sounds wash over him, distant conversations in Spanish and English, children's laughter, the clatter of dishes being prepared. A community, he realizes, the kind he left behind. Back in his penthouse, Dawn creeps across marble floors and finds him still in his party clothes. Sleep feels impossible. He paces from window to window, Camila's words echoing in his head. 6 months old, born in June. The math is inescapable, but it's more than numbers. It's the shape of Mia's eyes, the curve of her brow, features he sees every morning in his own mirror. His phone buzzes with updates about the Rivera Tech acquisition. Board members congratulating themselves on another profitable quarter. The messages feel hollow now, meaningless against the weight of what he's discovered. Camila's voice from years ago plays through his memory. "You can't build a life on nothing but ambition, Alejandro. Some foundations need to be deeper than that." He dismissed her then, convinced his success would prove her wrong. Now, watching sunrise paint his empire in shades of gold, he finally understands. All his towers and acquisitions, the carefully constructed facade of power, none of it matters against the simple truth of Mia's existence, against the possibility of family he'd thought forever lost. The city wakes beneath him, another day of deals and mergers beginning. But Alejandro Torres stands at his window, watching a different future unfold. one where success is measured not in stock prices, but in restored connections, in trust, rebuilt piece by piece, in the chance to be the father he never expected to become. His mother's voice whispers one last time, El corazón sabe el camino, the heart knows the way. For once, Alejandro listens. Morning light filters through the penthouse windows, casting long shadows across Alejandro's untouched bed. He hasn't slept. The weight of last night's revelation sits heavy in his chest as he adjusts his tie for the third time. The mirror reflects a man caught between worlds. Designer suit crisp and perfect, eyes haunted with questions he can't silence. His phone buzzes. Another congratulatory message about Rivera Tech. Alejandro swipes it away, focusing instead on the gift box on his desk. The wrapping paper catches the light, metallic silver with delicate patterns that probably cost more than most shelter residents make in a week. He winces at the thought. "The car is ready, Mr. Torres." Mateo's voice comes through the intercom. "Thank you." Alejandro gathers the gift and a leather folder containing the check. The amount seemed reasonable last night, enough to make a difference without appearing ostentatious. Now, in the harsh light of morning, he questions everything. The drive to the shelter feels longer than last night. Alejandro watches the city transform around them, gleaming towers giving way to weathered buildings and small businesses with signs in Spanish and English. A woman sweeps the sidewalk in front of her panaderia, the scent of fresh bread drifting through his cracked window. It reminds him of mornings before school when his mother would... He shakes off the memory. "Wait here," he tells Mateo, straightening his shoulders as he steps onto the cracked sidewalk. The shelter looks different in daylight, worn but dignified, like an old warrior bearing its scars with pride. Through the windows, he glimpses movement, lives in motion. A young boy helps his mother carry boxes. 2 teenage girls braid each other's hair. A grandmother rocks an infant, singing something soft and familiar. Camila spots him before he reaches the door. She stands in the entrance, arms crossed, expression carefully neutral. The contrast between his Armani suit and her paint-stained jeans feels like a physical barrier. "Alejandro." Her voice carries none of last night's softness. "I wondered how long it would take." "I brought." He stops, suddenly aware of how this must look. The expensive gift, the check burning a hole in his pocket. Throwing money at problems, just like always. "We're serving breakfast," Camila says, stepping aside. "You can leave the gifts with Rosa at the front desk." "Camila, please. I want to help." "Help?" She laughs, but there's no humor in it. "Like you helped when we were married? When I begged you to spend time with actual people instead of spreadsheets?" The words hit their mark. Alejandro grips the gift box tighter, fighting the urge to retreat to his carefully controlled world of board meetings and profit margins. "I'm trying to do the right thing." "Have the right thing." Camila's voice drops lower, intense. "These families don't need your guilt money, Alejandro. They need stability, respect, a chance to rebuild their lives without becoming someone's tax write-off." He pulls out the check, holding it like a shield. "This could fund new programs, improve facilities." "Stop." Camila holds up a hand. "You don't get to buy your way into Mia's life. That's not how this works." The rejection stings more than he expected. "Then tell me how it works, Camila, because I'm standing here trying to help and you won't even... You want to know how it works?" She steps closer, close enough that he catches the faint scent of baby powder and coffee. "It works by showing up, not just once with grand gestures and big checks, but every day. It works by proving you can think about someone besides yourself for more than a quarterly earnings report." Alejandro swallows hard, fighting back defensive words that taste like ash. Around them, shelter residents pass with curious glances, some recognizing him from news coverage or magazine profiles. Their scrutiny feels different than the attention he's used to, less deferential, more measuring. "Mia deserves better than a father who throws money at problems and disappears," Camila continues, softer now. "I won't let her grow up thinking she's just another item on your to-do list." "She's my daughter." The words come out rough, almost desperate. "Maybe. But biology isn't enough, Alejandro. You have to earn the right to be in her life." He looks down at the gift in his hands, seeing it suddenly through Camila's eyes. Another attempt to purchase what should be freely given. "What do you want from me?" I want you to prove this isn't just another acquisition for your portfolio. Camila's gaze holds his, unwavering. Show me you can be the man I thought I married, not just the CEO you became. Before he can respond, a cry echoes from inside the shelter. Camila turns toward the sound, maternal instinct overriding their confrontation. That's Mia. I need to go. Wait. Alejandro catches himself reaching for her, drops his hand. Can I see her? Camila hesitates, studying him with eyes that once knew every shadow in his heart. Come back next week. Tuesday morning, when I'm working the breakfast shift. We'll see how it goes. She disappears inside, leaving him with a gift that suddenly feels inadequate and a check he doesn't know what to do with. Behind him, traffic flows past the shelter, the city's rhythm unchanged by the seismic shifts in his personal landscape. Mateo waits by the car, face carefully neutral. Home, Mr. Torres? No. Alejandro slides into the back seat, loosening his tie. Take me to the office. I need to make some calls. The city blurs past his window, a kaleidoscope of lives he's spent years ignoring. Somewhere in that maze of streets, his daughter is crying and he doesn't know how to reach her. Money won't bridge this gap. For the first time in decades, Alejandro Torres faces a problem he can't solve with his checkbook. His phone buzzes again. The board, probably, with more congratulations about Rivera Tech. He silences it, watching instead as they pass the panaderia from earlier. The woman is still sweeping, her methodical strokes a reminder of his mother's quiet determination, of lessons he forgot in his rush to escape their working-class roots. Sometimes, Mateo says quietly from the front seat, the hardest investments are the ones that don't show up on any balance sheet. Alejandro meets his driver's eyes in the rearview mirror, seeing wisdom in their depths. Tell me about the shelter, Mateo. What do you know about their needs? Their real needs, not just what money can buy. As Mateo begins to speak, Alejandro pulls out his phone, opening a new note. For the first time in years, the numbers he writes down aren't profit margins or stock prices. They're volunteer hours, meal schedules, maintenance rosters. Small things, maybe, but a start. The gift box sits beside him, still wrapped in its expensive paper. Tomorrow, he'll return with something simpler, something that speaks of presence rather than price tags. For now, he listens to Mateo's quiet voice, learning the geography of a world he once knew but forgot in his climb to the top. It's not much, but it's a beginning. The following Tuesday dawns gray and cool, a rare January morning when Los Angeles remembers its winter. Alejandro arrives at the shelter early, having swapped his usual suit for dark jeans and a sweater that cost more than he wants to think about. He carries a small paper bag from the panaderia he's passed twice now, pan dulce, that smells like childhood mornings. Camila's eyebrows lift slightly at his appearance, but she doesn't comment. Mia's just waking up, she says instead. We're in the playroom. He follows her through narrow hallways, past rooms where other families are starting their days. A teenage boy nods to Camila, eyes widening slightly as he recognizes Alejandro. The recognition feels different here, stripped of its usual power. The playroom is small but bright, walls painted with murals of forests and animals. Toys are arranged neatly on low shelves, most showing signs of careful repair. In one corner, a portable crib holds his daughter. Mia stands at the rail, dark eyes curious as they fix on him. She's wearing purple pajamas with tiny stars, her hair slightly mussed from sleep. Something in Alejandro's chest constricts at the sight. Buenos dias, mi amor, Camila says softly, lifting Mia into her arms. Look who's here to see you. Mia regards him solemnly, one small hand gripping her mother's shirt. Alejandro takes a step forward, then stops, suddenly unsure. All his years of boardroom confidence desert him in the face of this tiny judge. I brought something, he says, holding out the paper bag. The scent of fresh bread fills the room. Mia's nose wrinkles slightly, a gesture so like Camila it makes his heart ache. She looks to her mother for reassurance, still uncertain. It's okay, bebe, Camila murmurs. Would you like to try some pan dulce? Alejandro pulls out one of the sweetbreads, its sugared surface glittering in the fluorescent light. He breaks off a small piece, offering it with a hand that doesn't quite shake. My mama used to buy these for me when I was little, from a shop just like Torres. Rosa's sharp voice cuts through the moment. She stands in the doorway, arms crossed. A word? Camila sighs. Rosa? It's important. Rosa's tone leaves no room for argument. Her dark eyes fix on Alejandro, measuring. Now. He follows her into the hallway where morning sounds echo off institutional walls, children's voices, running water, the clatter of breakfast preparation. Rosa turns to face him, every inch of her compact frame radiating protective fury. "What's your game?" she demands without preamble. "Excuse me?" "Don't play innocent. I've known Camila since college. I watched what your ambition did to her the first time." Rosa steps closer, undaunted by their height difference. "So I'll ask again. What's your game?" Alejandro forces himself to meet her gaze. "I'm trying to know my daughter." "Your daughter?" Rosa's laugh is sharp. "The one you didn't know existed until 3 days ago? The one Camila's raised alone while you built your empire?" The words hit like body blows, but Alejandro holds his ground. "I can't change the past, but I'm here now. For how long?" Rosa's voice drops lower, intense. "Until the novelty wears off? Until some new acquisition demands your attention? Until being a father interferes with your profit margins? That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, senor. These families know that better than most." Rosa gestures toward the shelter around them. "Camila's built something beautiful here. Something real. If you're just here to ease your conscience before running back to your penthouse, I'm not running." The words come out fiercer than he intended. "I know I've made mistakes, but Mia deserves. Mia deserves a father who shows up." Rosa's eyes soften slightly. "Not just when it's convenient. Not just when guilt or curiosity strikes. Every day, Torres. Through tantrums and nightmares and endless questions about why the sky is blue. Are you ready for that?" Before he can answer, a child's cry pierces the air. Not Mia this time, but someone else's pain echoing through the shelter's halls. Rosa turns toward the sound instinctively. "Think about it," she says over her shoulder. "Really think. Because if you break that little girl's heart, there won't be enough money in all your banks to fix it." She strides away, leaving Alejandro with the taste of pan dulce still sweet on his tongue and questions burning in his throat. Through the playroom door, he can hear Camila singing softly to Mia, an old lullaby his mother used to hum. His phone vibrates. The board, requesting an emergency meeting about the Rivera Tech integration. Numbers that once seemed crucial now feel distant, unreal against the sound of his daughter's quiet laughter. Alejandro silences the phone. Some choices, once made, can't be unmade. He takes a breath, straightens his shoulders, and steps back into the playroom where his future waits with curious eyes and sticky fingers. The next weeks blur into a routine Alejandro never imagined for himself. Tuesday and Thursday mornings find him at the shelter, learning the rhythms of his daughter's world. He arrives early to help with breakfast preparation, chopping vegetables and brewing coffee, alongside other volunteers who gradually stop staring at his presence. Today, he stands at the industrial sink, sleeves rolled up as he washes dishes. The work is mindless but grounding, so different from parsing financial reports or negotiating mergers. Through the kitchen window, he can see Mia in the small playground, bundled against the January chill as she toddles after a ball. "You missed a spot." Alejandro starts, nearly dropping the plate he's scrubbing. Camila stands beside him, close enough that their elbows almost touch. She picks up a dish towel, falling into the familiar dance of drying what he washes. "She's getting more confident on her feet," he says, nodding toward the window. Camila's hands move with practiced efficiency. "The doctor says her breathing is better too. The new medication helps." Alejandro tenses slightly. They haven't discussed his anonymous donation to the shelter's medical fund, but Camila's not stupid. The timing was too convenient to ignore. "I'm glad," he says carefully, keeping his eyes on the sink. "Torres!" The kitchen door swings open with enough force to rattle the pans hanging nearby. Marco, one of the shelter's maintenance workers, looks apologetic but urgent. "Phone call. Your office says it's important." Alejandro dries his hands slowly, fighting the instinct to rush toward crisis. "Take a message." They say it's about the Rivera Tech deal, something about community impact assessments. The words land like stones in still water. Beside him, Camila goes very still. "What kind of impact?" Her voice is too casual. "It's nothing," Alejandro says quickly. "Just business." "Business that affects this community?" Camila sets down her dish towel with deliberate care. "Like the kind of business that's been buying up properties around here, raising rents, pushing families into..." She cuts herself off, but the word hangs unspoken between them. "Shelters." It's not like that, Alejandro starts, but his phone buzzes again. The screen shows his CFO's number, urgent and accusing. Take your call, Senor Torres. Camila's voice carries the same chill he remembers from their last months of marriage. Some things never change, do they? She walks away before he can respond, spine straight and proud. Through the window, Mia has abandoned her ball to watch a butterfly, small face lifted in wonder. The sight makes his chest ache with possibilities he's not sure he deserves. The phone buzzes again. Alejandro answers it, but his eyes stay fixed on his daughter, measuring the cost of choices yet to come. Hours later, he sits in his office, the city lights below blurring into a galaxy of artificial stars. The Rivera Tech documents spread across his desk tell a story of profit and progress, of market dominance and shareholder value. But between the lines, he reads another narrative, one of displaced families and shuttered businesses, of communities transformed into commodities. His mother's voice whispers in memory, El dinero no compra la felicidad, my amor. A soft knock interrupts his thoughts. Come in. Mateo enters, carrying a folder that wasn't in today's schedule. You asked about the shelter's financial records? Yes. Alejandro pushes aside the Rivera Tech papers. What did you find? They're struggling. Mateo's voice is matter of fact. The medical program alone costs more than their annual budget can sustain, and with property values rising in the area, the implications hang heavy in the air. Alejandro thinks of Mia's breathing treatments, of the other children he's met who need similar care, of Camila's fierce pride and Rosa's protective anger. The Rivera Tech deal would secure his company's future. But at what cost? Alejandro stands, moving to the window where the city stretches endlessly below. Somewhere out there, his daughter sleeps in a shelter while he contemplates business moves that could displace more families like hers. Sir? Mateo's voice breaks through his thoughts. There's something else. The board is pushing for a vote on the acquisition timeline. They want to accelerate the development phase. Alejandro's reflection stares back at him, tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled from running his fingers through it. Success looks different from this angle, more complicated than the simple accumulation of wealth he once pursued. What do we know about alternative sites? The words come slowly, testing unfamiliar ground. Areas that wouldn't impact residential neighborhoods? The profit margins would be lower. Mateo's tone remains neutral, but something approving flickers in his eyes, and the board might resist any delays. The board isn't out there watching their community disappear. Alejandro turns back to his desk, pulling up the project schematics on his laptop. Find me options, Mateo. There has to be a way to grow without destroying what's already there. His phone lights up with another message from the shelter, a reminder about tomorrow's breakfast shift. The contrast between these two worlds he's straddling grows sharper every day. In one, he's the ruthless CEO building an empire. In the other, he's just another volunteer trying to earn his daughter's trust, one dishwashing shift at a time. The next morning finds him back at the shelter earlier than usual. Dawn paints the sky in shades of promise as he helps unload a delivery of donated groceries. His muscles protest the manual labor, so different from his carefully curated gym workouts, but the work feels honest in a way board meetings never do. You're getting better at that. Camila's voice startles him mid-lift. She stands in the doorway, Mia balanced on her hip, both of them watching him with eerily similar expressions of assessment. The produce boxes? He sets down his current load carefully. It's not exactly rocket science. No. A ghost of a smile touches her lips. Just honest work. The words echo his earlier thoughts so closely that he falters. Mia chooses that moment to reach toward him, small hands opening and closing in a gesture he's learning to recognize as want. Papa, she says clearly, the words still new enough to stop his heart. Camila's breath catches audibly. It's the first time Mia has named him, acknowledged him as more than just another shelter visitor. The weight of that trust settles on his shoulders like a mantle he's not sure he deserves. Can I? He holds out his arms, question unfinished. Camila hesitates only a moment before passing Mia to him. The child comes willingly, settling against his chest with the uncomplicated acceptance that only the very young possess. She smells of baby shampoo and sleep, her weight both strange and familiar against his heart. Hi, he whispers, the endearment falling naturally from lips more used to corporate jargon. She needs her breakfast soon, Camila says, but she doesn't move to take Mia back. Instead, she watches them with an expression he can't quite read, and her morning treatment. Reality intrudes with those words. The medical equipment waiting in their room, the constant vigilance Mia's condition requires. Alejandro thinks of the folder Mateo brought him of budget shortfalls and rising costs. I've been thinking, he starts carefully adjusting Mia as she plays with his shirt collar, about the shelter's funding situation. Camila's posture stiffens immediately. Alejandro, not like that, he rushes to clarify, not just throwing money at it, but there are ways to create sustainable support. Community partnerships, matching grant programs. Stop. But her voice lacks its usual sharp edge. Not now. Not while you're holding her. As if on cue, Mia pats his cheek with sticky fingers. Pan dulce? She asks hopefully, proving she remembers his earlier visits. The tension breaks as both adults laugh. After breakfast, Camila says firmly, and after your breathing treatment, mi amor. Alejandro follows them to the small medical room, still carrying Mia. The nebulizer sits ready on a table, its presence both reassuring and concerning. How many other children need similar care? How many families balance medication costs against basic necessities? The questions plague him through the treatment session, through breakfast preparation, through the quiet moments of watching Mia eat her pan dulce with focused determination. By the time he leaves for the office, his mind churns with half-formed plans and possibilities. His phone rings as Mateo drives them downtown. The board chairman's name flashes on the screen, probably with more questions about Rivera Tech. Alejandro stares at it for a long moment before declining the call. Take me to the Rivera Tech site first, he tells Mateo. I need to see it for myself. They drive through neighborhoods that border the proposed development area. Street vendors set up their carts for the morning rush. Children walk to school in small groups, backpacks bouncing. A woman waters plants outside her small restaurant, the sign advertising her mother's recipes. It's a living, breathing community. The kind he grew up in, the kind Camila fights to protect, the kind his daughter might have called home in another life. Find out who owns that lot on 7th, he tells Mateo, pointing to an abandoned warehouse. And the industrial park by the freeway. There might be another way to do this. His phone buzzes again. This time it's Rosa's number, probably about the shelter's weekly planning meeting. Two worlds pulling at him, demanding choices he never thought he'd face. Mia's voice echoes in his memory. Papa. Such a simple word to carry so much weight. The city stretches before him, a maze of possibilities and consequences. In his pocket, the phone continues its urgent dance of competing priorities. But for the first time in years, Alejandro Torres feels the ground shifting beneath his feet, realigning around a truth he'd forgotten. Some investments can't be measured in quarterly reports. The realization comes too late to prevent what happens next. Mia's cough starts during breakfast the following Tuesday. Just a small sound at first, barely noticeable over the clatter of dishes and morning conversations. But Alejandro catches Camila's subtle tension, the way her eyes track every slight wheeze. It's the weather change, she says when she catches him watching. She's always more sensitive when another cough interrupts her, harder this time. Mia's small face scrunches with effort, her breathing taking on a whistling quality that makes Alejandro's chest tighten in sympathy. The nebulizer, he suggests, already rising from his seat. Camila nods, gathering Mia into her arms. The child's normally rich brown skin has taken on a grayish tinge, her chest working visibly with each breath. Fear radiates from Camila in waves, though her voice remains steady as she whispers soothing words in Spanish. They hurry to the medical room, but the treatment brings little relief. Mia's breathing grows more labored, each inhale a battle against invisible constraints. Alejandro watches helplessly as Camila adjusts the mask, checks the medication levels, her movements precise despite trembling hands. She needs the hospital. The words scrape his throat. Camila, this isn't. I know. She doesn't look at him, focused entirely on Mia. But the last admission cost 3 months' salary, the insurance paperwork alone. I'll handle it. He's already pulling out his phone. Let me do this, please. Mia lets out a weak cry, reaching for her mother. The sound galvanizes them both into action, superseding their usual careful dance of pride and boundaries. Presbyterian Medical Center. Camila says as they hurry toward the exit. Dr. Ramirez knows her case. Alejandro barks instructions to Mateo, who's already bringing the car around. The drive passes in tense silence, broken only by Mia's labored breathing and Camila's soft stream of comfort. Tranquila, mi amor. Todo estará bien. At the hospital, Alejandro's name opens doors that might have remained closed. He watches as nurses swarm around Mia, attaching monitors and starting treatments with practiced efficiency. Camila never leaves their daughter's side, but exhaustion shows in every line of her body. The deluxe suite is available. A hospital administrator murmurs to Alejandro, "Given your status, whatever she needs." He cuts off the obvious pandering. The best specialists, any equipment required, but no special treatment beyond medical necessity. Hours crawl by in the pediatric wing. Alejandro paces, making calls between updates. His board meeting goes unattended. Riveratech's integration timeline sits unopened in his email. None of it matters against the sight of his daughter's small form in the hospital bed, wrapped in tubes and monitoring wires. Her lungs never fully developed in utero. Camila's voice breaks the silence as evening settles over the city. She sits beside Mia's bed, one hand resting on their sleeping daughter's arm. The doctors say she'll need ongoing treatment, possibly surgery when she's older. The words land like body blows. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? She looks at him then, eyes red-rimmed but challenging. 6 months ago, when you were buying out competitors and building your empire, would knowing about a baby with medical needs have changed anything? That's not fair. No? Camila laughs softly, the sound raw. You talk about helping now, about throwing money at her care, but money isn't what she needs most, Alejandro. She needs a father who will be there for every crisis, every setback, someone who won't disappear when things get complicated. I'm not going anywhere. The words come out fierce, surprising them both. Prove it. Camila's gaze holds his. Not with your checkbook, not with your influence. Prove you can be what she needs, what this family needs, even when it costs more than money. Before he can respond, Mia stirs, whimpering slightly. They both turn to her, parental instincts overriding their tension. Her color looks better, her breathing easier, but fear still coils in Alejandro's gut at how fragile she seems. His phone vibrates. The board chairman again, probably furious about his missed meeting. The Riveratech papers sit untouched in his briefcase, full of plans that could reshape neighborhoods, displace families, create more stories like the ones he sees in this hospital wing. Alejandro Torres built his empire on knowing the cost of everything. But watching his daughter sleep, her small hand curled trustingly around his finger, he confronts the price of what matters most. Success means nothing if it costs him this moment, this chance to be the father Mia deserves. I'll stay tonight, he tells Camila softly. You should rest. She starts to protest, but exhaustion wins. The nurses have my number. If anything changes, I'll call, I promise. Camila gathers her coat, hesitating at the door. Alejandro, thank you for being here. After she leaves, Alejandro settles into the chair beside Mia's bed. His phone lights up again, messages cascading with urgent demands from a world that suddenly seems very far away. He silences it without looking, focusing instead on the steady rise and fall of his daughter's chest. El corazón sabe el camino, his mother used to say. The heart knows the way. In the quiet of the hospital night, watching over the daughter he nearly missed knowing, Alejandro finally understands what she meant. The January sun barely breaks through Los Angeles' morning haze as Alejandro Torres parks his Mercedes in front of the shelter. He tugs at the collar of his Henley shirt, the casual cotton feeling foreign against his skin after years of tailored suits. The building's worn brick facade looms before him, windows reflecting the pale winter light. A cluster of volunteers gathers near the entrance, their laughter and rapid-fire Spanglish carrying across the parking lot. Alejandro's steps slow as he approaches, hyper-aware of how his designer jeans and Italian leather boots mark him as an outsider, despite his attempt at casual dress. Mateo waves from where he's unloading paint supplies from a truck. Mr. Torres, glad you made it. His driver's familiar face provides an anchor in this unfamiliar territory. We're starting with the community room today. Just Alejandro here, he corrects, rolling up his sleeves. The morning air carries a hint of winter chill, but the prospect of physical labor makes him grateful for the lighter clothing. Inside, the shelter buzzes with activity. Volunteers move furniture, tape baseboards, and lay drop cloths across worn linoleum floors. The institutional beige walls wait like blank canvases, soon to be transformed by the warm terracotta paint stacked in neat rows. Camila stands in the center of it all, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing paint-splattered overalls that somehow make her look more beautiful than any evening gown. She directs volunteers with quiet authority, her smile genuine as she hands out brushes and rollers. "You actually came." Her voice cuts through the chaos as she notices him. Surprise colors her tone, though she tries to mask it. Alejandro grabs a roller, trying to project more confidence than he feels. "I said I would." "You've said a lot of things." The words carry no heat, just tired resignation. She gestures toward an empty section of wall. "Start there. 2 coats, even strokes." He nods, grateful for the clear direction. The work is methodical, requiring just enough focus to quiet the storm of thoughts in his head. As he paints, he watches Camila move through the room. She stops to demonstrate proper technique to an elderly volunteer, laughs at something a teenage girl whispers to her, kneels to comfort a crying toddler with the practiced ease of someone who has found her purpose. "She's good at this, isn't she?" Mateo appears beside him, his own roller moving in steady strokes. "Been volunteering here for months now. Knows everyone's story, makes sure the kids have school supplies, helps the mothers find work." The information settles like lead in Alejandro's stomach. While he's been chasing acquisitions and profit margins, Camila has been building something real, a community that reflects the values his own mother once tried to instill in him. "I didn't know you volunteered here," Alejandro says, realizing how little he knows about the man who's driven him for years. Mateo shrugs. "There's a lot you didn't ask about." His tone holds no judgment, just simple truth. "Break rooms through there if you need water. Watch out for the storage closet. Bit of a mess since the flood last month." The mention of the storage room tugs at Alejandro's attention. He finishes his section of wall before following Mateo's directions down a narrow hallway. The break room door stands open, but another door, slightly ajar, catches his eye. The storage closet is indeed a mess, boxes stacked haphazardly and donations spilling from shelves. Alejandro steps inside, telling himself he's just curious, though his racing pulse suggests otherwise. A shelf of art supplies draws him closer, construction paper, dried-out markers, and beneath them a leather-bound sketchbook. His breath catches at the familiar handwriting on the cover. Camila Vega. Before he can think better of it, he opens to the first page. The sketches hit him like physical blows, their wedding day captured in swift, sure strokes, his younger self grinning as he twirls Camila on the dance floor. Quiet evening moments. Alejandro asleep at his desk, papers scattered around him, the way sunlight used to fall across their breakfast table on Sunday mornings. He turns another page and freezes. The drawing shows Camila holding a child, but the baby's features are indistinct, a question mark hovering where a face should be. The date in the corner matches their last night together, that desperate, beautiful mistake that might not have been a mistake at all. "Those are private." Camila's voice from the doorway makes him jump. The sketchbook nearly slips from his hands. "I'm sorry, I was just..." He stops, knowing there's no good explanation. "These are incredible." They're old. She steps into the small space, close enough that he catches the faint scent of paint and something floral, her shampoo maybe unchanged after all these years. "From before. Before I ruined everything?" The words escape before he can stop them. Camila takes the sketchbook, her fingers brushing his as she does. "Before we both made choices we couldn't take back." She studies the open page, the questioning lines of the baby's face. "Or maybe we could, if we were different people now." The moment stretches between them, heavy with possibility. Then voices in the hallway break the spell and Camila steps back. "We should get back to work." "Wait." Alejandro gestures to the sketch. "That one with the baby. When did you draw it?" Something flickers in her expression. "You know when." She turns and walks away, leaving him alone with the implications of her words. The storage room suddenly feels too small, the walls pressing in with the weight of everything unsaid. Back in the main room, the morning has progressed into afternoon. Sunlight streams through freshly cleaned windows, warming the new paint to a rich earthen glow. Volunteers chat as they work, sharing stories and snacks. The scene stirs memories of community gatherings from Alejandro's childhood, the way his mother's tiny apartment would overflow with neighbors, bringing dishes to share, everyone contributing what they could. He picks up his roller again, but his hands shake slightly. Every time he glances at Camila, he sees the sketch superimposed over reality, the question mark replaced by Mia's familiar features. The resemblance he's been trying to ignore becomes impossible to deny. Hours pass in a blur of paint fumes and careful brushstrokes. As the day winds down, volunteers begin to disperse, leaving behind freshly colored walls and the satisfaction of shared purpose. Alejandro helps stack unused supplies, hyper-aware of Camila's presence across the room. Finally, only a handful of people remain. Camila hands a set of keys to an older woman, Rosa, he remembers from earlier introductions. Lock up when you're done. I need to talk to Alejandro. Rosa's sharp glance between them speaks volumes, but she takes the keys with a nod. Don't forget Mia's appointment tomorrow. I won't. Camila turns to Alejandro. My office? He follows her down another hallway to a small room barely bigger than his walk-in closet at home. A desk loaded with paperwork takes up most of the space. The walls display children's artwork and thank you notes written in wobbly handwriting. No corporate awards or stock certificates here, just genuine expressions of gratitude. Camila closes the door and leans against it, arms crossed. The position makes her look smaller somehow, more vulnerable than he's seen her since that last night in his office. Sit, she says, gesturing to the room's only chair. She remains standing, perhaps needing the illusion of control that height provides. The chair creaks as Alejandro settles into it. Paint flakes from his hands onto his jeans, but for once he doesn't care about the ruined fabric. His attention fixes on Camila's face as she visibly steels herself for what comes next. Mia is yours, she says simply, the words dropping into the space between them like stones into still water. She was born in June. Do the math. Though he suspected, known, really, since seeing that sketch, the confirmation still hits him like a physical blow. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? Camila's laugh holds no humor. You were in Singapore that month, remember? Some merger you couldn't postpone. I tried calling. The memory surfaces, missed calls he'd meant to return, voicemails deleted in the rush between meetings. I would have come back. Like you came back all the other times I needed you? She pushes away from the door, pacing the small space. I had to think about what was best for her. A father who might show up for the important moments, or no father at all, which would hurt less. The words sting because they're true. He thinks of all the promises he's broken, the relationships sacrificed on the altar of success. I want to do better, be better. He stands, needing to move, to act. Let me prove it. Words are easy, Alejandro. Camila stops pacing, meeting his gaze directly. You've always been good with words, but Mia needs more than promises. She needs stability, consistency. She needs a father who shows up even when it's inconvenient. I know, he steps closer, close enough to see the tears she's fighting back. I know I don't deserve another chance, but she does. Mia deserves to know where she comes from, who she is. He gestures to the children's artwork surrounding them. She deserves the kind of community you've built here. Camila studies him for a long moment. If you're serious about this, there are conditions. No grand gestures, no trying to buy your way in. You show up when you say you will. You learn who she is before making promises about who you'll be to her. Anything. The word comes instantly, without calculation or strategy for the first time in years. And your company? Her tone sharpens. The board meeting next week about acquiring those properties in East LA? The ones that would displace hundreds of families like the ones we help here? The question catches him off guard. Of course, she knows about that. Camila has always paid attention to what matters. I'll handle it. That's not good enough. She moves to the desk, shuffling papers until she finds what she's looking for, a proposal for expanding the shelter's services. These families need advocates, not adversaries. If you want to be part of Mia's life, you need to understand where she comes from, who she'll become. The challenge in her voice is clear. It's not just about Mia, but about the values they once shared, the dreams they had before ambition crowded out everything else. Alejandro takes the proposal, skimming pages of carefully researched needs assessments and community impact statements. "I'll read it," he promises. "All of it." Camila nods, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. "Go home, Alejandro. Think about what this really means. Not just for you, but for her. For all of us." She opens the door, letting in the sounds of the shelter winding down for the day. "Come back when you're ready to do more than paint walls." He pauses in the doorway, the proposal heavy in his hands. Down the hall, he catches a glimpse of Mia playing with other children, her dark curls bouncing as she laughs. His daughter. The thought fills his chest with equal parts terror and possibility. "I won't disappoint her," he says quietly. "Either of you." Camila's smile holds a trace of their shared history, hope tempered by experience. "Prove it." The drive home passes in a blur of city lights and tangled thoughts. In his penthouse, Alejandro stands at the windows, watching Los Angeles spread before him like a carpet of stars. The view that once represented everything he'd achieved now seems emptier somehow, missing the only thing that really matters. His phone buzzes, another message about the board meeting, the properties in East LA, the endless march of profit and progress. Alejandro sets it aside, unopened. Instead, he spreads Camila's proposal across his desk, the pages replacing quarterly reports and acquisition documents. The first light of dawn finds him still reading, making notes, seeing his city through new eyes. On his computer screen, an email to the board takes shape, not a resignation, but a redirection, a way to build something lasting without destroying what matters most. Across town, the shelter's newly painted walls dry in the morning air, terracotta warming to match the rising sun. Alejandro Torres, CEO and newfound father, watches the city wake and plans his next move. Not a corporate strategy this time, but something far more important. The first steps toward becoming the man his daughter deserves. His mother's voice whispers in memory, "El corazón sabe el camino." The heart knows the way. For once, Alejandro listens. The morning passes in a whirlwind of calls and meetings, each one a careful step toward dismantling the barriers he's built between his worlds. His executive team reacts with varying degrees of shock when he announces his intention to scale back certain responsibilities. "The Rivera Tech acquisition," his CFO sputters. "Can wait," Alejandro cuts in, his voice firm. "We need to reassess our impact on local communities, starting with East LA." The protests wash over him like background noise, meaningless against the memory of Mia's laugh, the weight of Camila's trust. He ends each meeting the same way. "Change is coming. You can help shape it or step aside." By afternoon, rumors of his apparent mental break from reality have probably reached every corner of the corporate world. Alejandro finds he doesn't care. The hollow satisfaction of another successful quarter pales against the possibility of building something real, a legacy, measured in lives touched rather than profits earned. He catches his reflection in his office windows, the same sharp suits and carefully controlled expression, but something different in his eyes. Something that looks almost like hope. His phone buzzes with a message from Camila. "Mia asked about you today." 3 words that change everything. Again. The message propels him from his office chair. Within an hour, he's back at the shelter, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, ready to be whatever Mia needs him to be. Back at the shelter, Camila watches through the office window as Alejandro sits cross-legged on the playroom floor, helping Mia stack wooden blocks. His designer watch catches the afternoon light as he steadies the tower with careful hands. Something in his posture has shifted over the past few days, the rigid corporate armor giving way to something more human. "He's been here every day this week," Rosa says, appearing at Camila's side with 2 cups of coffee. Steam rises between them as she hands one over. "On time, too." Camila accepts the coffee, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. "He's trying." Question is, will trying be enough? Rosa's tone carries the weight of experience. 20 years running the shelter has taught her how often good intentions crumble under pressure. Men like him, they don't change easily. He's different now. The words surprise Camila as they leave her mouth. She watches Alejandro catch Mia as she stumbles, his hands gentle, face softening with an instinctive tenderness she remembers from their early days. "Sometimes I see glimpses of who he used to be, before the money became everything." Rosa makes a non-committal sound. "Just be careful, mija. Protect your heart and hers." In the playroom, Mia's tower collapses in a clatter of blocks. Instead of immediately rebuilding, Alejandro lets her explore the scattered pieces, following her lead as she creates something new from the chaos. His patience, his willingness to simply be present in the moment. These are changes Camila can't ignore. I'm not rushing into anything, she tells Rosa, though her eyes stay fixed on the scene before them. But maybe people can surprise you. Maybe they can remember who they were meant to be. Rosa squeezes her shoulder and moves away, leaving Camila to watch as father and daughter build something new together, one careful piece at a time. The January rain drums against the shelter's windows, casting wavering shadows across institutional linoleum. Alejandro stands in the doorway of Camila's office, his tailored suit at odds with the weathered furniture and donation boxes. He's rehearsed this conversation a dozen times during sleepless nights, but the words still feel inadequate. I want to help, he says, watching Camila sort through a stack of intake forms. Not as a corporate sponsor. No press releases, no tax write-offs. Just help. Camila's pen pauses mid-signature. She looks tired in the fluorescent light, dark circles shadowing her eyes. Why now? Because this place matters. Alejandro moves further into the office, careful to maintain his distance. What you're building here, it's real. These families deserve support without strings attached. Unlike your usual investments, the words carry an edge, but Camila's expression softens slightly. She sets down her pen, giving him her full attention. Explain what you're proposing. An anonymous trust, enough funding for renovations, expanded programs, whatever the shelter needs. But my name stays out of it. This remains your vision, your community. Rain patters against the windows, filling the silence between them. Camila studies him with the same careful assessment she once used on blank canvases, seeing past surface to possibility. The community built this place, she says finally. Their sweat, their hope. I won't let it become another corporate trophy. It won't. Alejandro's fingers brush the edge of her desk, tracing old water rings. I remember what my mother used to say about true charity. It should be like breath, necessary but invisible. Something flickers in Camila's eyes, recognition perhaps of the boy who once quoted poetry in community college classrooms. I'll consider it, she says, but I need time, and proof that your intentions go deeper than your wallet. Fair enough. Alejandro straightens, adjusting his tie more from habit than necessity. I should check on Mia. Is she still in the playroom? With Rosa. Camila's tone warms at the mention of their daughter. She's been asking for you. Something about an unfinished puzzle? The playroom buzzes with afternoon energy, children's voices bouncing off painted concrete walls. Mia sits cross-legged on a worn alphabet rug, tongue caught between her teeth as she studies puzzle pieces. Her dark curls escape their ribbons, wild as her mother's used to be. Need help? Pequeña? Alejandro settles beside her, his Italian leather shoes tucked carefully under his legs. Mia's face lights up. Papa, she pushes several pieces toward him. The sky parts are hard. The word still catches him off guard. Papa. Such a small sound to carry so much weight. He examines the puzzle pieces, noting how Mia mirrors his movements. Sometimes the tricky parts just need a different angle. See how these edges line up? They work in companionable focus, Mia humming snatches of songs he half remembers from his own childhood. She chatters about her day, the parakeet someone brought to show and tell, the pan dulce rosa shared at snack time, the new girl who doesn't speak English or Spanish, but draws beautiful flowers. Like Mama's paintings, Mia adds, fitting another piece into place. But bigger. Alejandro's chest tightens. He remembers Camila's old studio, canvases blooming with color and life, the art she abandoned when their marriage crumbled, her creativity withering under the shadow of his ambition. Your mama is very talented, he says carefully. Maybe she'll paint again someday. She paints with us sometimes. Mia points to the wall where children's artwork hangs in cheerful rows. See? That's her butterfly, next to mine. The paintings blur slightly as Alejandro studies them, matching butterflies, one skilled and one charmingly lopsided, both signed in careful cursive, Camila y Mia. Beautiful, he manages. Como tú, mi amor. Rosa appears in the doorway, her usual wariness softened by what she's witnessed. Mia, cariño, time for your snack. We have fresh conchas today. Can Papa come too? Mia gathers puzzle pieces, already moving toward the promise of sweet bread. Of course. Rosa's eyes meet Alejandro's, communicating volumes. There's plenty to share. The shelter's kitchen holds the comfortable chaos of any home's heart. Women chat in Spanish and English, children weave between tables, and the scent of coffee mingles with fresh pastries. Alejandro accepts a chipped mug and concha, watching Mia demonstrate her puzzle strategies to two younger children. She has your focus, Rosa observes, sliding into the seat across from him. When she decides something matters, nothing distracts her. Is that a compliment or a warning? Both, maybe. Rosa sips her coffee. The residents talk about you, you know. The mysterious businessman who appears with books and toys but never stays for meals. They wonder what you want from us. I want. Alejandro breaks off, searching for words that won't sound hollow. I want to understand this place. The work you do here, the lives you touch, it matters more than quarterly reports and stock prices. Pretty words. Rosa's tone is neutral, but words don't feed families or fix leaking roofs. No, Alejandro agrees. Actions do. He spends the afternoon learning shelter routines, sorting donations, helping with homework, fixing a temperamental washing machine. His hands grow dirty, his tie loosened then discarded. Each task reveals new needs, opportunities where his resources could make real difference. Evening finds him in the intake office, reviewing budget sheets with Camila. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, but her face has lost some of its earlier wariness. The roof needs more than patches, she admits. And the heating system is ancient. Last winter, we had families sleeping in coats. I can help with that. Alejandro keeps his tone carefully neutral. Through the trust, no conditions, no publicity. And you're bored? They'll ask questions about anonymous donations. Let them. He meets her gaze steadily. Some things matter more than corporate image. The moment stretches between them, weighted with history and possibility. Then Mia's voice rings from the hallway, bright with excitement. Mama! Papa! Come see what we made! They find her in the art room, proudly displaying a family portrait, 3 figures holding hands beneath a brilliant sun. The proportions are charmingly skewed, but the love in every crayon stroke is unmistakable. It's us, Mia explains unnecessarily, for the new art wall. Alejandro's throat tightens as he studies the drawing. His figure wears a suit the exact shade of blue as his favorite tie. Camila's wild curls spill across the paper in joyful loops. Between them, Mia beams with crayon-bright happiness. It's perfect, mi amor, Camila says softly. Her shoulder brushes Alejandro's as they both lean closer to examine the details. The touch is accidental, fleeting, but it sends warmth spreading through his chest. This, he realizes, is what he's been searching for in gleaming office towers and corporate acquisitions. This simple moment of family, of belonging. Should we hang it now? Mia bounces on her toes, impatient for action. Of course. Alejandro lifts her easily, letting her direct him to the perfect spot. As they work together to position the drawing, he catches Camila's reflection in the window, watching them with an expression that mingles hope and hesitation. Outside, the rain has softened to a gentle patter. Inside, in this moment, everything feels possible. The fever strikes without warning 3 days later. One moment, Mia is coloring at the shelter's worn kitchen table. The next, she's burning up, struggling for breath. Alejandro arrives to find Camila in the emergency room waiting area, her composure cracking around the edges. Respiratory infection, she says before he can ask. Her voice wavers slightly. They're running tests. The fluorescent lights wash everything in sickly green, making Camila look ghostly. She hasn't changed from her shelter clothes, paint-stained jeans, a sweater with a loose thread at the cuff that her fingers worry constantly. What do they need? Alejandro asks, already reaching for his phone. I can have specialists here within the hour. They're doing their jobs. Camila's tone carries a familiar edge. Money can't solve everything, Alejandro. No, but it can get her the best care available. He fights to keep his voice level. Let me help, Camila, please. Before she can respond, a nurse appears with update forms. Camila reaches for them automatically, but her hands shake too much to grip the pen properly. Without comment, Alejandro takes the clipboard and begins filling in the information. They're shown to Mia's room an hour later. She looks impossibly small in the hospital bed, dark curls limp against white pillows. Monitors beep steadily, marking each labored breath. An oxygen mask fogs with each exhale. Mi amor, Camila whispers, settling into the chair beside the bed. Her fingers find Mia's, careful of the IV line. Alejandro stands at the foot of the bed, gripping the rail until his knuckles whiten. All his wealth, his power, his carefully constructed empire, none of it matters against the sight of his daughter's struggle to breathe. The specialist arrives shortly after, summoned by a single phone call. He reviews Mia's charts with practiced efficiency, adjusting medication doses and ordering additional tests. Each intervention costs more than most shelter families see in a month. She'll need continued care, the doctor explains. Regular monitoring, possibly some time in a rehabilitation facility. Camila's spine stiffens. We can't. I'm covering everything, Alejandro cuts in. Whatever she needs. Alejandro, Camila's voice holds warning. We talked about this, about using money to control. This isn't about control. The words escape louder than intended. Mia stirs restlessly, and they both freeze until she settles. When Alejandro continues, his voice is lower but no less intense. This is about our daughter's health. Nothing else matters. Everything matters. Camila's eyes flash. Every choice, every power dynamic. You can't just throw money at problems and expect. I'm not throwing money. Alejandro runs a hand through his hair, disheveling its usual perfect styling. I'm using the resources I have to help our child, the way any parent would. Any parent who happens to be a billionaire. Yes! He paces the small room, tension thrumming through him. I am a billionaire. I can't change that, but I can use it to make sure Mia gets the best possible care. Why isn't that enough? Because nothing's ever just what it seems with you. Camila's voice cracks slightly. There are always strings, always expectations. Not this time. Alejandro stops pacing, meeting her gaze directly. No strings, no expectations, just a father wanting to help his daughter. The monitors beep steadily in the silence between them. Finally, Camila nods once, sharp and decisive. Fine, but we do this my way. No corporate takeover of her care. No pushing aside the doctors who've been treating her. You provide the resources, but medical decisions are joint. Agreed. Relief loosens some of the tension in Alejandro's shoulders. Whatever you think is best. They settle into an uneasy routine over the next few days. Camila rarely leaves Mia's side, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair. Alejandro splits his time between the hospital and his office, handling urgent business matters from his phone when possible. Rosa brings fresh clothes and home-cooked meals, her usual wariness softened by concern. She's strong, she tells them both, like her parents. The words land differently for each of them. Encouragement for Camila, uncomfortable truth for Alejandro. He sees his own stubborn determination in Mia's fight for each breath, his drive reflected in her slow but steady improvement. On the fourth night, Alejandro returns from a brief trip to his office to find Camila crying silently in the hallway outside Mia's room. She wipes her eyes quickly when she sees him, but the vulnerability lingers. What happened? He fights the urge to reach for her. Is she? She's fine. Sleeping. Camila wraps her arms around herself. I keep thinking about all the families at the shelter. What happens when their children get sick, when they can't afford specialists and private rooms? The question hits like a physical blow. Alejandro remembers his own childhood. His mother's constant worry about medical bills, the times she worked double shifts to afford antibiotics. We could set up a fund, he offers carefully, through the trust. Emergency medical care for shelter families. Another Band-Aid solution? But there's less bite in Camila's tone than usual. It's not just about money, Alejandro. It's about access, about dignity, about not having to beg for basic human rights. Then we'll work on that too. The words come easily, powered by conviction. Policy changes, advocacy, whatever it takes. Camila studies him in the harsh hospital lighting. You really mean that? Yes. He meets her gaze steadily. I'm learning that real change requires more than checkbooks and corporate strategies. It needs heart, like you've always known. Something shifts in her expression, not quite forgiveness, but perhaps understanding. Before she can respond, a nurse appears with updated test results. Mia's numbers are improving. The antibiotics are working. They share a moment of pure relief, momentarily united by parental concern. Then reality reasserts itself, the late hour, the uncomfortable chairs, the weight of past mistakes and future uncertainties. You should get some rest, Alejandro says. I'll stay with her. Camila hesitates, then nods. Wake me if anything changes. He settles into the chair beside Mia's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. In sleep, she looks so much like Camila, the same delicate features, the stubborn set to her jaw. But there's something of him there, too, in the arch of her eyebrows, the shape of her hands. Te amo, mi pequeña, he whispers, careful not to wake her. The words feel rusty in his mouth, too long unused. But they're true, truer than any corporate speech or boardroom declaration. Dawn finds him still there, tie loosened, jacket draped over Mia's feet like a makeshift blanket. Outside the window, Los Angeles wakes to another day of possibilities and promises. Inside, in this quiet moment, Alejandro Torres finally understands what his mother meant about true wealth having nothing to do with bank accounts. The next week passes in a blur of medical updates and careful negotiations. Mia's condition improves steadily, but the underlying tension between her parents remains. Every decision becomes a potential battleground, treatment options, aftercare plans, even the choice of hospital food. She needs to maintain her routine. But Camila insists during one particularly heated discussion. Her friends at the shelter, her art classes. She needs proper rest and monitoring, Alejandro counters. The penthouse has better air filtration, more space. The penthouse isn't home. Camila's voice carries the weight of old arguments. It's just another symbol of everything that went wrong between us. The words hang in the antiseptic air, too honest to ignore. Alejandro sinks into a nearby chair, suddenly exhausted. I'm trying, Camila, to be better, to understand, but I keep getting it wrong, because you're still thinking like a CEO. She softens slightly, perching on the windowsill. Not everything needs a grand solution or perfect efficiency. Sometimes it's just about being present, being real. I don't know how to be real anymore. The admission costs him, but it's true. Except with her. With Mia, I remember. The man who used to paint with neighborhood kids? Camila's smile holds a trace of old affection. He's still in there somewhere, under all the corporate armor. I want to find him again. Alejandro's voice roughens. For Mia. He trails off, unable to finish the thought. Camila watches him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Before she can respond, Mia's nurse appears with medication and fresh vitals. The moment breaks, but something has shifted between them. A crack in the carefully maintained wall of professional distance. Later that evening, Alejandro finds himself alone in the hospital's small chapel. He hasn't prayed since his mother's funeral, but the familiar scent of candles and old wood draws him in. He sits in the back pew, head bowed, letting memories wash over him. His phone buzzes. Another urgent email from the board about the Rivera Tech merger. 6 months ago, this deal would have consumed him. Now, watching his daughter fight for each breath, corporate victories feel hollow. Mr. Torres? Mateo's voice is soft in the chapel's stillness. His driver stands in the doorway, holding a fresh suit and briefcase. The board is requesting an emergency meeting. Alejandro stares at his reflection in the polished wood of the pew before him. The man looking back seems older, worn thin by sleepless nights and hard realizations. Tell them I'm dealing with a family emergency. They're insisting. Then let them insist. Steele enters his voice, not the practiced authority of the boardroom, but something deeper. My daughter needs me. Mateo's reflection nods, a small smile playing at his lips. Very good, sir. Shall I bring you anything else? Coffee, perhaps? No. Alejandro rises, straightening his rumpled shirt. But thank you, Mateo, for everything. Change takes time, sir. Mateo's voice carries gentle wisdom. But it starts with choices like this. The words follow Alejandro back to Mia's room, where he finds Camila reading a dog-eared picture book. Their daughter sleeps peacefully, her breathing easier than it's been in days. The oxygen mask has been replaced with a small nasal cannula, another sign of improvement. The giving tree, Camila says softly, holding up the book. She won't sleep without it. I remember that one. Alejandro settles into the chair opposite her. My mother used to read it in Spanish. El Árbol Generoso. A ghost of a smile touches Camila's lips. Rosa found this copy at a used bookstore. Mia loves the illustrations. They sit in companionable silence, watching their daughter sleep. Outside, the city lights paint abstract patterns on the hospital walls. Inside, the monitors beep their steady rhythm of recovery. I've been thinking about your proposal, Camila says finally, for the Shelter Trust. Alejandro keeps his voice carefully neutral. And? It could work. She traces the book's worn spine with one finger. But I need guarantees. Written agreements about autonomy, about maintaining the shelter's identity. Whatever you need. Relief floods through him. My lawyers can draw up. No lawyers. Camila's tone brooks no argument. We do this person to person, parent to parent. Alejandro studies her in the dim light, seeing past the exhaustion to the fierce determination that first drew him to her. Agreed, we'll write it ourselves. Every detail, every protection you want. Starting with healthcare access for all shelter families. Her chin lifts slightly. Real change, not just charity. Real change, he echoes. The words feel right, like pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. A small sound from the bed draws their attention. Mia stirs, dark eyes blinking open. Mama? Papa? We're here, mi amor. They speak in unison, then share a startled glance. Mia's smile is drowsy but real. Can we go home soon? The question hangs between them, loaded with implications. Home, the shelter's warm chaos, or the penthouse's sterile perfection? Before either can respond, Mia continues. I miss my art wall, and Rosa's conchas, and the new girl's flower drawings. Camila squeezes their daughter's hand. Soon, cariño, when you're stronger. Both homes, Alejandro finds himself saying. You'll have both whenever you want. It's not a perfect solution, but Mia's smile brightens. Camila's expression softens almost imperceptibly. And for the first time in years, Alejandro feels the weight of his corporate armor starting to crack. The morning Mia is cleared for discharge, tension crackles through the hospital room like static before a storm. Alejandro arrives early, armed with detailed plans for home care and rehabilitation. He finds Camila already there, filling out paperwork with sharp, decisive strokes. The shelter's ready, she says without looking up. We've set up a quiet room near my office, proper air filtration, all the medical equipment. The penthouse has a dedicated nursing suite. The words come automatically, rehearsed during sleepless nights. Private therapy pool, oxygen systems. Stop. Camila's pen stills. Just stop trying to solve everything with money. I'm trying to keep her safe, and I'm trying to keep her whole. Camila finally meets his gaze, eyes bright with unshed tears. She needs more than medical equipment, Alejandro. She needs her community, her friends, her art. She needs her father, too. The words escape before he can polish them into something less raw. Please, Camila, don't shut me out again. The silence stretches between them, weighted with years of misunderstandings and missed chances. Then a small voice pipes up from the hospital bed. Can I have both? They turn to find Mia watching them, her expression too wise for her years. She sits propped against a mountain of pillows, already dressed in her going-home clothes, paint-stained overalls and a sweater that used to be Camila's. Both, Alejandro manages, like the butterfly garden at school. Mia's voice carries the simple logic of childhood. Some butterflies stay in the garden, but some fly to different flowers. They still come back. Camila makes a sound that might be a laugh or a sob. When did you get so smart, mi amor? Rosa says I get it from both of you. Mia beams, clearly pleased with her solution. So can I? Have both homes? Alejandro looks at Camila, really looks at her for the first time in years. Past the exhaustion and wariness to the woman who once believed in second chances, in fresh starts, in the power of love to bridge seemingly impossible gaps. We could try, he offers quietly. Split time, maybe. The shelter during the day, the penthouse when she needs extra medical support. And family dinners, Mia adds firmly. Rosa says families need to eat together. Something loosens in Camila's expression. Not quite forgiveness, but perhaps its first seedling. We'll figure it out. Day by day. The discharge process passes in a blur of instructions and prescriptions. Alejandro handles the paperwork while Camila packs Mia's things. Get well cards from shelter kids, the dog-eared picture book, a tablet loaded with breathing exercises disguised as games. In the parking lot, their vehicles present another stark contrast. Alejandro's sleek town car idles beside Camila's practical hybrid, Mateo and Rosa waiting respectively. Mia solves this dilemma too, insisting on riding with Camila, but extracting a promise from Alejandro to join them for dinner. Real dinner, she specifies from her car seat. Not office dinner where you look at your phone. Real dinner, he agrees solemnly. No phones allowed. Watching them drive away, Alejandro feels something shift inside him, like a key turning in a long rusted lock. The afternoon stretches ahead, filled with board meetings and quarterly reviews. But for the first time in years, he knows exactly where he needs to be when the workday ends. Mateo catches his eye in the rearview mirror. The shelter for dinner, sir? Yes. Alejandro loosens his tie, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. And Mateo? Thank you for always knowing the right direction. The city scrolls past in its endless dance of light and shadow. In his pocket, Alejandro's phone buzzes with urgent messages from the board. He leaves it unanswered, watching instead as Camila's car navigates toward the shelter, toward home, in all its complicated, beautiful meanings. Sometimes, he realizes, the hardest battles aren't fought in boardrooms or balance sheets. Sometimes they're won in hospital rooms and shelter kitchens that, in small moments of trust, rebuilt and walls carefully dismantled. His mother's voice whispers in memory, El corazón sabe el camino. The heart knows the way. For once, Alejandro listens. The shelter's evening rhythm wraps around them like a familiar blanket. The clatter of dishes from the kitchen, children's voices echoing down corridors, the smell of Rosa's cooking mingling with fresh paint from the ongoing renovations. Alejandro finds himself relaxing despite the lingering hospital anxiety, his shoulders dropping from their boardroom stance. Mia holds court at her usual table, already surrounded by young admirers eager to hear about her hospital adventure. She describes everything with dramatic flair, her hands painting pictures in the air just like Camila's used to do. And then, she announces, they let me keep the special breathing mask for art projects. The children lean in, fascinated. Alejandro catches Camila's eye across the room, sharing a moment of parental pride. She's setting up an impromptu art station, covering tables with newspaper and setting out washable paints. Craft therapy, she explains when he raises an eyebrow. It helps them process difficult experiences. He remembers suddenly the community center art classes where they first met, Camila teaching scared kids to turn their nightmares into colorful monsters they could control. Need an assistant? The offer surprises them both. Camila hesitates, then hands him a stack of paper. Pass these out, one per child, and make sure. The younger ones get the heavier stock, he finishes. I remember. Something flickers in her expression, pain or possibility, he's not sure which. Before either can comment, Mia's voice rises in distress. No puedo respirar! They move as one, reaching their daughter's side as she struggles for breath. Her lips have a bluish tinge that sends ice through Alejandro's veins. The inhaler appears in Camila's steady hands, but Mia's panic makes it hard to coordinate. Mi amor, look at me. Camila's voice stays calm despite the fear in her eyes. Remember the butterfly game? Slow breaths, like butterfly wings. Mia tries, but the wheeze in her chest only worsens. Around them, the shelter's evening routine fractures, children backing away in fear, Rosa already on the phone with emergency services. The nebulizer, Alejandro says, in the car. He forces himself to walk, not run, to the town car. Mateo already has the trunk open, medical bag ready. The drive back feels endless, though it's only seconds. By the time he returns, Mia's lips are definitely blue. The next few minutes blur into a nightmare of medical equipment and desperate prayers. Camila holds Mia while Alejandro sets up the nebulizer, his hands steady despite the terror clawing at his throat. The medication mist fills the air between them, carrying hope in every particle. Slowly, painfully slowly, Mia's breathing eases. Color returns to her lips. The wild fear in her eyes fades to exhaustion. She slumps against Camila, spent but stable. I want to go home, she whispers. The words crack something in Alejandro's careful composure. The penthouse has better emergency equipment, overnight monitoring, oxygen systems. She needs familiar surroundings, Camila cuts in, her own bed, her comfort objects. She needs to be safe. The words explode from him, fueled by leftover fear. All the comfort objects in the world won't help if she can't breathe. And all the medical equipment won't help if she's scared and stressed. Camila's voice rises to match his. She needs stability, not more upheaval. Stop. Mia's voice is small but firm. No fighting, please. They fall silent, shame replacing anger. Around them, the shelter holds its breath, residents and staff frozen in a tableau of concern. Rosa steps forward, practical as always. Why not both? Set up the medical equipment here in Mia's room. Best of both worlds. The suggestion hangs in the air like the last notes of a song. Alejandro looks at Camila, really looks at her. Past the defensive anger to the bone-deep exhaustion beneath. She meets his gaze steadily, chin lifted in that familiar, stubborn angle. It could work, he offers finally. I'll have everything delivered tonight. Private nurses can train the staff on emergency procedures. No private nurses. Camila's tone leaves no room for argument. We'll learn the procedures ourselves, all of us, together, like a real family. The word family echoes between them, heavy with meaning. Before Alejandro can respond, Mia tugs at both their hands. Can we have story time now? The breathing made me tired. Simple words, uncomplicated needs. Alejandro feels the fight drain out of him, replaced by something softer, something that tastes like hope. Of course, mi amor. Camila scoops their daughter up, careful of the nebulizer tubing. Your papa can read tonight. He does the best voices. It's an olive branch, offered with grace he doesn't deserve. Alejandro accepts it carefully, following them to Mia's room. The shelter's evening rhythm resumes around them, dishes clattering, children laughing, life flowing onward despite its occasional storms. Later, after Mia sleeps and the medical equipment is properly arranged, Alejandro finds Camila in her office. She's updating incident reports, her handwriting betraying leftover tension from the evening's scare. I'm sorry, he says simply, for losing my temper, for trying to control everything. I know, she sets down her pen, looking tired but resolute. We're both trying to protect her in our own ways. Maybe, she hesitates, then continues. Maybe we need to learn to protect her together. The words open a door between them, not fully, but enough to let in a breath of possibility. Alejandro thinks of Mia's butterfly metaphor, of gardens in flight and always coming home. Together, he agrees softly, day by day. Outside, Los Angeles continues its endless dance of light and shadow. Inside, in this moment, something shifts, like tectonic plates realigning, like the first drop of rain after drought. Not healing, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of its possibility. The next few days settle into a cautious routine. Alejandro arrives each morning before board meetings, helping with Mia's breathing treatments. He returns each evening for dinner and stories, his Italian suits increasingly wrinkled from sitting cross-legged on shelter floors. The corporate armor that once felt like a second skin now chafes, restrictive and unnecessary in this space. Your tie's crooked. Mia informs him one evening, reaching up to tug at the silk with paint-stained fingers. They sit at her favorite art table, working on a new family portrait. This one shows 3 figures in a garden, butterflies dancing around their heads. Maybe it's time to retire the tie, Alejandro muses, loosening the knot. The simple action feels symbolic, like removing another piece of the wall he built between his worlds. Camila appears in the doorway, watching them with an expression he can't quite read. The contractors hear about the ventilation upgrades. They need authorization for some changes. I'll handle it. He starts to rise, but Mia's small hand catches his sleeve. No phones, she reminds him seriously. You promised. The moment stretches like pulled taffy, duty and desire, past and present, all the choices that led him here. Camila steps fully into the room, her practical sneakers silent on institutional tile. I can deal with the contractor, she offers. You two finish your masterpiece. The words carry no edge, no hidden barbs about priorities or promises. Just a simple acknowledgement that some moments matter more than others. Alejandro settles back into his chair, watching Camila's retreating form with a familiar ache in his chest. Mama looks tired, Mia observes, carefully selecting another crayon, like my butterfly when it first came out of its cocoon. Change is tiring, Alejandro says softly. Even good change. That's what Rosa says. Mia adds another butterfly to their portrait, this one half emerged from its chrysalis. But she says tired is different from giving up. Wisdom from the mouths of babes, his mother would say. Alejandro studies his daughter's focused expression, seeing echoes of both himself and Camila in the set of her jaw, the creative spark in her eyes. Later, after Mia's evening breathing treatment and third reading of The Giving Tree, Alejandro finds himself lingering in the shelter's small courtyard. The space has transformed since his first visit. New planters overflow with herbs and flowers, a mural blooms across one wall, and strings of lights cast warm shadows on freshly painted benches. She did this, Rosa's voice startles him from his contemplation. Camila, after Mia was born, said every home needs a garden. Alejandro traces a finger along a planter's rough edge. She always understood what makes a real home. I never did. Rosa settles onto a nearby bench, her usual wariness softened by exhaustion or understanding. But you're learning. That counts for something. Before he can respond, a crash echoes from inside, followed by the unmistakable sound of Mia coughing. They move as one toward the noise, but Camila's voice carries clearly through the evening air. Deep breaths, mi amor. Like the butterflies, remember? In through your nose, out through your mouth. By the time they reach the art room, the crisis has passed. Mia sits in Camila's lap, breathing normally, surrounded by scattered art supplies. A toppled easel explains the crash. I got excited, Mia explains sheepishly. The paint colors were dancing. Art is exciting, Camila agrees, smoothing their daughter's wild curls. But we need to remember our breathing exercises, yes? The scene catches in Alejandro's throat. This simple moment of motherly wisdom, of crisis averted through love and patience rather than expensive equipment. He thinks of his own mother, of all the ways she made their tiny apartment feel like a palace through sheer force of care. I could stay tonight, he offers quietly. Help with the overnight breathing treatments. Camila's hands still in Mia's hair. For a moment, he thinks she'll refuse. Maintain the careful boundaries they've established. But Mia's eyes light up. Like a real sleepover? With hot chocolate and stories? A working sleepover, Camila corrects gently, to help you breathe better. She meets Alejandro's gaze over their daughter's head. The couch in my office pulls outlet. If you're sure your schedule allows, I'm sure. The words come easily, truth in every syllable. Some things matter more than schedules. Rosa mutters something that sounds suspiciously like finally in Spanish, but her smile holds genuine warmth. She helps them clean up the scattered art supplies, then disappears to make her promised hot chocolate. Later, after Mia sleeps and the shelter settles into its nighttime quiet, Alejandro finds Camila in the courtyard garden. She stands near the butterfly mural, moonlight painting silver streaks in her dark hair. Thank you, he says simply, for letting me stay, for letting me try. She needs you. Camila's voice carries no accusation, just tired truth. And you need her. Maybe we all need each other in ways we're just starting to understand. The admission costs her. He can see it in the tension of her shoulders, the way her fingers worry that loose thread on her sleeve. But she makes it anyway, another small bridge built between their separate worlds. A siren wails in the distance, a reminder of the city beyond these walls. But here in this moment, Alejandro feels more grounded than he has in years. The garden's herbs release their night scent, rosemary and mint, life continuing its cycle despite all human drama. Day by day, he echoes their earlier agreement. Together. Camila's smile holds a ghost of her old warmth. Day by day. Above them, the moon paints silver patterns through new leaves. Below, roots grow stronger in soil enriched by time and care. And between these layers of growth and change, a family begins the slow work of healing, as messy and beautiful as any garden, as fragile and resilient as butterfly wings in flight. The January sun casts long shadows across East Los Angeles as Alejandro Torres guides his Mercedes through familiar streets. Each turn reveals another memory. The corner store where he bought penny candy, the playground where neighborhood kids played soccer until sunset. His mother's voice echoes in his mind. Este barrio tiene corazón. This neighborhood has heart. He parks near the modest apartment building where he grew up, its faded stucco the same shade of yellow he remembers. The fire escape still zigzags up the facade like a metal vine. On summer nights, he and his mother would sit there, sharing paletas and dreaming about his future. Inside Morales Market, the bell above the door chimes just as it did 20 years ago. The smell of fresh bread and coffee wraps around him like an old friend's embrace. Javier looks up from behind the counter, his weathered hands pausing as he stocks cigarettes. Alejandro Torres. Javier's smile crinkles the corners of his eyes. Twice in 1 month, the neighborhood will start talking. Let them talk. Alejandro runs his fingers along a shelf of canned beans, remembering how his mother would compare prices between brands, stretching every dollar. Some things are worth coming back for. Javier studies him for a moment, then reaches beneath the counter. He pulls out a paper bag, worn at the edges. Your mother left this here years ago, said to give it to you when you were ready to remember who you are. Inside the bag, Alejandro finds a stack of notebooks bound with rubber bands. His mother's elegant script fills the pages. Prayers, recipes, and wisdom accumulated over a lifetime of hard work and unwavering faith. She knew you'd find your way back, Javier says quietly. Success means nothing if you forget who you're working for. The words settle in Alejandro's chest like stones in still water. He tucks the notebooks under his arm, suddenly eager to read his mother's thoughts. Gracias, Javier, for keeping these safe. Back in his penthouse, Alejandro spreads the notebooks across his desk. The afternoon light catches the gold leaf of nearby skyscrapers, but for once he barely notices the view. His mother's words draw him in, each entry a window into her heart. Mi Alejandro works so hard at school. Sometimes I see him studying by flashlight when he thinks I'm asleep. I pray he achieves his dreams, but I pray harder that he remembers dreams mean nothing without love to share them. Today he got his acceptance letter. Full scholarship. My heart could burst. But when he hugs me, I feel him pulling away already. Dios mío, help him find balance between ambition and connection. A man's true wealth is measured by the lives he touches. Alejandro's throat tightens as he reads entry after entry. His mother saw it all. His drive to escape poverty, his growing distance from their community, the walls he built around his heart. She recognized his patterns long before Camila did. At his computer, Excel spreadsheets glow with projections and profit margins. The Rivera Tech acquisition hovers in his inbox, waiting for final signatures. But his mother's words echo in his mind. A man's true wealth is measured by the lives he touches. His fingers fly across the keyboard, drafting a new business plan, one that maintains profitability while reinvesting in communities like the one that shaped him. Ethical guidelines that prioritize people over pure profit. Programs to support small businesses, fund education initiatives, create opportunities for families struggling like his once did. The sun sets over Los Angeles as Alejandro works, like casting the city in shades of gold and promise. For the first time in years, his success feels like a tool rather than a trophy, a means to effect real change rather than just accumulate power. His phone buzzes with a reminder. The shelter's fundraising gala starts in 2 hours. Alejandro straightens his tie, tucking his mother's newest journal entry into his breast pocket. Tonight isn't about impressing investors or closing deals. Tonight is about honoring promises. To his mother, to Camila, to the community that never stopped believing in him. The ballroom glows with warm light when Alejandro arrives, elegant without being ostentatious. Volunteers in neat attire guide guests through displays of the shelter's work. Before and after photos of renovated spaces, testimonials from families who found their footing, children's artwork bright with hope and possibility. Camila moves through the crowd with natural grace, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the designer labels around her. She speaks with passion about the shelter's mission, her eyes bright with purpose. Even exhausted, she draws people in, making them believe in the possibility of change. Alejandro hangs back, watching her work the room. She's always been most beautiful like this, fully engaged in something meaningful, radiating conviction. The diamond necklace he once gave her for their anniversary never suited her half as well as this quiet confidence. Mr. Torres? A young volunteer appears at his elbow. You're up next to speak. The podium looms before him, spotlights harsh and expectant. Alejandro reaches into his pocket, touching his mother's journal for courage. The crowd falls silent, waiting. When I was 7 years old, he begins, his voice steady despite his racing heart. My mother and I lived in a shelter, not unlike this one. She worked 3 jobs, but sometimes even that wasn't enough. The community helped us survive. Neighbors sharing meals, teachers staying late to help with homework, store owners who let bills slide until payday. He pauses, finding Camila's face in the crowd. I promised myself I'd never need that kind of help again. I worked hard, climbed high, built walls around my heart with steel and glass. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that success means nothing if you're not lifting others as you rise. The silence in the room deepens as Alejandro continues, his carefully prepared speech forgotten in favor of raw truth. This shelter, under Camila Vega's leadership, embodies everything I lost sight of. Compassion, connection, the power of community to transform lives. Tonight, I'm announcing an anonymous endowment that will fund this shelter's expansion and ensure its programs continue for generations to come. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Alejandro holds up a hand. But more importantly, I'm committing myself, not just my money, to this work. Because my mother was right. A man's true wealth is measured by the lives he touches, not the profits he accumulates. His voice catches as he meets Camila's gaze. I lost my way once, choosing ambition over connection. But thanks to remarkable people who never stop believing in second chances, I'm finding my way back to my community, to my values, to the truth that success means nothing without family to share it with. The applause, when it comes, feels like absolution. But it's Camila's expression that matters most. Surprise melting into something softer, more complex. She moves through the crowd toward him as he steps down from the podium, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You didn't have to do this, she says quietly when they're close enough for private words. Yes, I did. Alejandro resists the urge to reach for her hand. Not for recognition, not even for forgiveness, but because it's right. Camila studies him for a long moment, seeing past his expensive suit to the boy who once painted with her in the park, who dreamed of changing the world. You're different, she finally says. The man I married would have made this about himself. The man you married was afraid of being seen as weak. Alejandro glances around the elegant ballroom at the faces of people whose lives will be transformed by tonight's commitment. I'm learning that real strength comes from being vulnerable, from admitting when you've lost your way. They find a quiet corner as the party continues around them, settling into chairs tucked away from the crowd. The distance between them feels both vast and paper-thin, years of hurt and hope tangled together. I know I have no right to ask for another chance, Alejandro says slowly, but I want to be part of Mia's life, really part of it, not just providing financial support. I want to know her favorite color, her fears, her dreams. I want to be someone she can count on. Camila's fingers twist in her lap. She asks about you, when she sees your picture in the business section. She's too young to understand everything, but she knows you're important somehow. I want to be important for the right reasons this time. Alejandro pulls his mother's journal from his pocket, offering it like a peace offering. Read this, please. When you have time, I think you'll understand better where I've been and where I'm trying to go. Before Camila can respond, a familiar voice pipes up. Mama! Papa! Mia barrels toward them, her party dress slightly rumpled, her dark curls escaping their ribbons. She crashes into Alejandro's legs with the fearless trust of childhood, arms raised in silent demand. Without hesitation, he lifts her onto his lap. She smells of fruit punch and sugar cookies, her small body warm and vital against his chest. Camila watches them, something soft and wondering in her expression. Did you see me dancing? Mia asks, bouncing slightly. Rosa taught me salsa. I saw, Alejandro says, his throat tight with emotion. You're very talented, Mia Moore. The endearment slips out naturally, and Mia beams. She snuggles closer, already growing heavy with approaching sleep. Over her head, Alejandro meets Camila's gaze. I can't promise it will be easy, and Camila says quietly. Co-parenting takes work, communication, clear boundaries. I know. Alejandro strokes Mia's hair, marveling at its silk-fine texture. I'm ready to do the work, whatever it takes. We'll start slow, Camila decides. Regular visits at the shelter, maybe dinner once a week. She needs stability, consistency. Anything you think is best. Alejandro means it completely. I trust your judgment with her. You've done an amazing job, Camila. A ghost of a smile touches her lips. She makes it easy. She has your determination, but thankfully she got my common sense. They sit together as Mia dozes, the gala's elegant music washing over them. It's not quite family, not yet, but it's a beginning, fragile and full of possibility. The following weeks blur into a new routine. Alejandro restructures his schedule, delegating more to his capable team. Board members raise eyebrows when he leaves early for Mia's dance recital, but he's learning that some priorities matter more than quarterly projections. He volunteers at the shelter every Wednesday, rolling up his sleeves to serve meals or paint walls. The residents stop seeing him as a wealthy outsider, start sharing their stories over coffee and pan dulce. Their resilience humbles him. Their dreams echo his mother's journals. Camila watches his efforts with cautious optimism. Sometimes he catches her studying him when she thinks he's not looking, as if trying to reconcile this version of him with the man who once chose a merger meeting over their anniversary dinner. 1 year later, they gather at the shelter for another New Year's celebration. The space has transformed. Fresh paint, updated facilities, new programs helping families transition to permanent housing. But the heart remains the same: community, connection, hope. Mia dances with other children to traditional Latin music, her laughter bright as bells. She's grown inches in the past year, but some things haven't changed. Her fierce hugs, her tendency to fall asleep during movies, the way she scrunches her nose, just like Camila when she's thinking hard. Penny for your thoughts? Camila appears beside him, offering a paper cup of champagne. Just grateful, Alejandro says honestly, for second chances, for you believing in me enough to let me try again. Camila's shoulder brushes his, warm through the silk of her dress. You did the work, she says simply. You showed up, consistently. That matters more than any donation or speech. Outside, fireworks paint the sky in bursts of color and light. Mia runs to them, demanding to be lifted up for a better view. Alejandro scoops her onto his shoulders as Camila steadies her with gentle hands. Make a wish, mi amor, Camila tells their daughter as midnight approaches. Mia giggles, covering both their eyes with her small hands. Already got my wish, she declares. Family all together. Alejandro's heart swells as he meets Camila's gaze over their daughter's head. The path ahead isn't certain. They're still learning to trust, to communicate, to balance their different worlds. But standing here, surrounded by community and possibility, he finally understands what his mother meant all those years ago. Success isn't measured in profit margins or acquisitions. It's measured in moments like these. His daughter's laughter, Camila's tentative smile, the knowledge that his resources are helping families find their way forward. It's measured in connections restored, trust rebuilt, love offered without expectation. The new year arrives in a cascade of light and sound. Alejandro holds his family close, grateful for second chances and the wisdom of those who never stopped believing in him. His mother's voice whispers one last time, El corazón sabe el camino. The heart knows the way. Thank you so much for watching and listening to our story. Your time and support mean the world to us. If this video resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content. Your engagement helps us grow and continue sharing meaningful stories. See you in the next video.